and I'm here in our office with Marjorie Celona, whose debut novel, Why, was published in the United States just a couple weeks ago and has already gotten many rave reviews. In the novel, Marjorie tells the story of Shannon, a girl who is abandoned as a child at a YMCA. And then the story alternates between Shannon's story as she grows up and then the story of her birth mother. It is a powerful book that can be painful to read at times, although ultimately it is a hopeful story and just very beautifully written with vivid and poetic descriptions. I just finished it this week and really enjoyed it a lot. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us about your book.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So first I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the genesis of the novel and Shannon's character in particular. If there was some personal experience or something you read about or something you learned about that led you to want to write about an abandoned baby.
Sure. It was a couple of different things. Sort of two things that happened concurrently. The first is that I became interested in the letter Why. And I became interested in the letter because I was preparing for an internship at a magazine called the Malahat Review. And I was reading back issues to prepare for this internship. And I noticed that so many of the stories began with a word that started with the letter Y. They use a beautiful drop cap, so these sort of big Ys were just, you know, standing out off the page, absolutely. And I was taking the bus a lot in those days, and on the bus ride home I just started thinking about the letter, what it looks like, what it sounds like, such and such. And when I got home, I wrote the first paragraph that kind of begins the novel, which is sort of like a meditation on the letter. And from there, Shannon's voice just sort of said, my life begins at the Y. And, you know, in some ways that's sort of all it was. It was becoming interested in the letter and then having this little girl in my head who said, my life begins at the Y, and I didn't know what that meant at first. And so when I first started writing the book, it was at first just to figure out what that meant and what that little girl's story was.
Well, just to kind of give a little background, the letter Y is really a touchstone in this book. It's Shannon is left at the YMCA, her mother's name is Eula. Why, the question why, is kind of an echo throughout the book. It's really kind of poetic and interesting and a creative and unusual kind of way that the reader is left with this impression of the letter Y. Are you, as a writer, are you interested in how words physically look on the page? Is this something that you think about, or? It
is. I love typography. I love fonts. I have to write in a certain font. I have to edit in another font. It used to be Garamond, now it's switched to Minion. So, you know, I'm absolutely particular about the way words look on the page. I love letters. I love, you know, I love all of it. So
cool. Well, throughout the book you write very convincingly from Shannon's point of view from different ages, from the time that she's a very young child up through her teen years. And I wondered if it was difficult for you to get in the mindset of a child, and if you have particularly vivid memories from your own childhood at some age. Was there some age that you connected with in particular with Shannon's character? Because it changes.
It does change. I mean, it begins when she's a baby and ends on her 17th birthday. It wasn't that difficult to access sort of the feelings and the voice of a child. It wasn't that hard. I thought it might be more difficult, but it wasn't. I listened to a lot of music when I wrote Why. And particularly when Shannon was older, when she's a teenager, I listened to a lot of music that I listened to as a teenager, which was shocking to discover how bad it was. But it kind of brought me back to, you know, to a lot of those memories. As far as from the child's point of view, I don't, you know, I never worried about it. I mean, in some ways, even though it's as if she's telling it when she's a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, it's also her as an older child looking back. So she's a very observant character. I mean, a first-person narrator has to be.
Very sensory, and
she's very sensory, and so it was less of, can I remember what it's like to be 6, and more of, can Shannon just describe her surroundings.
Another aspect of the novel that I enjoyed thinking about was the fork in the road concept, which is another kind of theme and that is echoing throughout the story of, in her life in particular, so much of it hinges on one choice or on a circumstance of this particular moment. I wondered if this was something that you're personally interested in. Do you fixate or focus on fork in the road moments in your own life? And do you believe that in our lives, it does come down to these moments?
I mean, I think I fixated more on fork in the road moments when I was younger, when decisions felt more kind of make or break it. I think when you're, maybe from age 17 to 25, every decision felt really vital. Will this decision lead to my employment, for example? Will this decision lead to, any number of things? I don't fixate on that so much now. I think we're more preoccupied with the choices we make. To some extent when we're younger, because we're trying to shape our life and we're trying to take control of our life. So every choice we make feels so vital. Not that every choice I make now doesn't feel vital, but it's just different. I guess I can relax a little bit more into the choices I make now.
And it seems too that Shannon is not particularly fixating on the past so much. She's very, brave, it seems, in how she deals with the cards that she's been dealt, and is very, forward, which is something I admired about her character. So you were born on Vancouver Island, which is where the story takes place, and now you live in Cincinnati, and then went to grad school in the United States, and I wondered when you moved away from home what you thought about the most, what you missed the most about Vancouver Island, and why you thought that this would be the right setting for Shannon's story.
That's such an easy question for me to answer. It was the ocean, hands down. And I still miss it because I live in Cincinnati now, and it's absolutely the ocean. I think part of the reason that I didn't know initially whether I would set why on Vancouver Island, but before I'd sort of committed to that, I just realized that I was having such a wonderful time writing it on Vancouver Island because I wrote it in upstate New York in the midst of a very snowy winter, and it was so wonderful to sort of go back to the island, at least in my head, and be by the water and be in the forest.
It is an evocative setting. There's some key scenes that focus on being on the water and characters that talk about how much the water and particularly these settings mean to them. You really can picture it in your mind. Another thing I was curious about was your research into the foster care system. And in this book, there are examples. Shannon goes through several different homes as she's growing up, and she has positive examples of a home and also negative examples. And I wondered what the most, first of all, what the most surprising thing you learned about foster care, and if your story was based on conversations with social workers or with people who've gone through foster care. And
Shannon's story was wholly her own, and I wrote the book and then did the research after writing the novel because I wanted to be very true to Shannon and her own experience. But after I wrote the novel, that was when the research started. That's when I talked to foster parents and social workers and people who'd been adopted, doctors, lawyers, and all the rest, just to say, I've written this story, is this plausible at all? In which case some of the facts changed. But the basic elements of Shannon's story all stayed the same, and I felt it was important to write it first and then do the research after. So nothing about Shannon's story was born from anything that I read about, or from anything that anyone told me when I was doing the research. But in terms of the most interesting thing I learned, I don't even know where to start. I mean, almost everything I was told in some way was fascinating. I talked to a foster parent who fosters babies, and I don't know. I love that there's a human being in the world right now who's fostering not just one but multiple babies. So I talked to many remarkable people,
and there's a lot of kind of wisdom packed in the books and conversations that Shannon has with one of her foster moms and with a man who's kind of a mentor to her about what family is, and that is a changing, her, level of comfort at her home changes throughout the book, and that's, it kind of challenges your ideas about what you think family is. So you were in Nashville to do a reading at Parnassus, our local bookstore, and I know you've done several other events spreading the word about the book. I wondered, as a debut author, what is the thing that you've enjoyed the most about talking to readers about your book?
I really enjoy hearing people's, not necessarily their interpretations of the novel, but I enjoy hearing what they connected to the most. I actually really enjoy it when people tell me that they connected more to Shannon's mother's side of things rather than Shannon's. Because it's first person and Shannon was such a loud voice in my head, it's actually quite magical for me when somebody wants to talk about Eula, wants to talk about her birth mother and her side of things and her storyline. So that's probably my favorite part of it is just talking to readers about what particular character they happen to connect to the most.
Well, you mentioned, or said it, thinking about what readers' interpretation is. And one thing I think in the years I've been interviewing authors at BookPage, even in the past few years, it's changed so much how many readers are commenting about what they're reading on social media and on their blogs. And is this something that you like as an author, being able to interact with them online?
No.
Do you kind of opt out, or once it's out into the world, they can just have it?
I really don't like that part of it. It feels very, no, but I have sort of trouble with the internet in general. I just don't like I don't like the comment function of anything on any website, so.
Yeah, it's funny how it seems that authors are on all sides of that spectrum, and whether they like to get in there in the trenches.
I don't like to get in there at all.
Well, well, readers can comment on our blog and we'll respond. And you are teaching at the University of Cincinnati, is that?
I was. I'm not currently,
okay.
But yes, I was doing that last year.
Okay. Well, what is on your plate now? Are you working on another book, or?
That's absolutely what I'm doing. I'm working on a second novel right now.
Can you tell me anything about the story? Is it a childhood story or something completely different? Is it set in Vancouver?
I think it's too early to tell. I'm still working out the setting. I'm still working out exactly what it's about. All I know right now is that it's about brothers. And I think it's going to span the scope of their entire lifetime. And that's truly all I know at the moment.
Well, we'll look forward to reading that. Well, thank you so much, Marjorie, for talking to me and to BookPage readers. And if you haven't already, check out Why, which is on sale now. Thanks.
Thank you.